So I was asked the question, how do I begin to help these women suffering with fibroids? How do I begin to help? And I explained to this person that I taught my wife how to shrink her fibroid. My wife suffered with fibroids, a single massive fibroid, for over 10 years. And it caused her all sorts of aggravation in life. We'll post her story in another video. But I did the research and I taught my wife how to shrink that fibroid naturally, without drugs and without surgery. And then I taught the process to another woman who had the same results. She suffered with fibroids for even longer than my wife did, 13 years. And then she managed to shrink her fibroids in the space of a year. So this is a process that has been tested a couple of times with the same results. So it shows promise. And the plan is obviously to launch a pilot program with a larger group of women and then to turn it into a full-fledged coaching program. But when I explained to this woman, he said to me, how do you begin to help these women who are suffering with fibroids? I said, after going through the process, reviewing my notes on the things I taught my wife, I turned it into a 3-stage framework which I call the SUN framework, S-U-N. And the S stands for stop doing the things that cause fibroids to grow in the first place. And then the U stands for undo the damage to your body. And we do that with a process of gentle but effective detoxification. And then the N stands for nutrition. Nourish the body with the right nutrients. And when you do all three of those things, you stop doing the things that cause fibroids. You undo the damage to your body by detoxifying, and you nourish the body with all the right nutrients. Fibroid growth slows down and eventually comes to a halt. It stops altogether. Then it goes into regression. It starts to shrink. All the time, your hormones are being balanced as well. So that's how that process works. And the next question I was asked then is, what is the first step that women should take? Now, on that note, I want to take a look at the NHS website. Now, the NHS website is the National Health Service website for the UK. It's an authoritative health website, and it has some things to say about fibroids. So let's just take a look at this. I'm on a fibroids page on the NHS website, and it tells you a bit about what fibroids are. It says they are non-cancerous growths that develop in or around the womb, which is also known as the uterus, and tells you about fibroids. And then you scroll down some more, and we come to a key passage in this article on why fibroids develop. I'm just going to expand that. It says, why fibroids develop. The exact cause of fibroids is unknown, but they have been linked to the hormone estrogen. Estrogen is the female reproductive hormone produced by the ovaries, the female reproductive organs. Then it says fibroids usually develop during a woman's reproductive years from around the age of 16 to 50, when estrogen levels are at their highest. They tend to shrink when estrogen levels are low, such as after the menopause, when a woman's monthly period stops. To me, this is a key passage. This contains some major clues. First of all, they say the exact cause of fibroids is unknown. And I can imagine that causes a lot of confusion to women who are looking for answers. But then they go on to give you a clue. They say here, but they have been linked to the hormone estrogen. So that's the first major clue. Second major clue, down here, it says fibroids usually develop during a woman's reproductive years when, and here's the clue, when estrogen levels are at their highest. So this is when the fibroids develop, when estrogen levels are at their highest. And then it says they tend to shrink when estrogen levels are low. such as after the menopause when a woman's monthly period stops. So that's quite interesting. If they grow, if they develop when estrogen levels are highest, when estrogen levels are high, and they shrink when estrogen levels are low, I'm willing to bet that estrogen is the answer. When estrogen levels are too high in a woman, the fibroids grow, and if you can normalize that, get that back down to normal levels somehow, the fibroids will shrink. He says they shrink when estrogen levels are low, right? Such as after the menopause when a woman's monthly period stops. But even if a woman hasn't reached menopause yet, if you can somehow lower the estrogen levels and get them into a normal balance, then the fibroids, it should stand to reason that the fibroids would shrink all by themselves, that the body would repair itself. And that's exactly what we discovered when I told my wife that actually we need to stop doing the things that cause fibroids to grow in the first place. She was able to shrink her fibroids successfully. Now, the question that arises when you read a passage like this, that fibroids grow when estrogen levels are high and they shrink when estrogen levels are low. The question that arises is, why does a woman have high levels of estrogen? Are the ovaries that produce the estrogen in a woman's body, are they malfunctioning and producing too much? I would guess that's not the case. So where does that leave us? I think, personally, the way I thought about it was that there must be external sources of estrogen that are coming into the body somehow. And this is what is causing fibroids to grow in women who have that sort of genetic susceptibility to high levels of estrogen. And we found three major sources. There's other minor sources as well, but three major sources were tap water, plastics, and hormonal birth control. Those are the three major sources of estrogen and chemicals that behave like estrogen, that mimic estrogen when they get into the human body and bind to the same receptors as estrogen, and synthetic forms of estrogen as well from outside, from the plastics. We found that those are the three major sources. Tap water, because as good as our filtration system is in the West, it doesn't filter out these types of chemicals. It's been proven that there are lots of psychiatric medication and all sorts of pharmaceutical drugs in the tap water that get into the system and that never get filtered out. And this is being increased daily. But I'll do another video on that. But yeah, tap water, plastics. So plastics contain chemicals that they use to harden the plastics. And anything that we drink out of plastic containers or food that we eat out of plastic containers, including BPA-free plastics, they all contain chemicals that produce estrogenic activity in the body. And so that's another major source. And plastics are the incredibly hard thing to get rid of in your diet because we're surrounded by plastics. There's even microplastics that are in the air that we breathe in. So it's a battle, which is why the second part of our Sun framework is so important, that even though we're exposed to plastics daily, we need to introduce a process of gentle and effective daily detoxification into our life as well in order to get rid of this. And this is another reason why men's sperm counts are also decreasing year on year, because our bodies are being flooded with estrogen. And then, of course, the last thing I mentioned as the major source of external estrogen or synthetic estrogen coming in to disrupt the body's hormonal balance is hormonal birth control. So primarily the birth control pill and any other types of patches or even the coil that sort of release hormones into the body on a regular basis in order to prevent pregnancy. So these types of sources, they are the major sources of disruption of the hormones in your endocrine system, which is a system that is in charge of the hormones in your body. But they are the three major sources that introduce hormones into the human body and cause that imbalance whereby you've got excessive amounts of estrogen in the body. And those women who are susceptible to that. You have that kind of genetic predisposition, if you like, that sensitivity to too much estrogen. They are the ones whose bodies react to it, and this causes a fibroid growth. So this was the assumption that I made, and my wife was brave enough to understand that and be willing to test this hypothesis, and she ran with it. And within 3 months, her periods went from being abnormally long, 2.5 weeks, all the way down to a week long. So it stopped her excessive bleeding. And then in a further 9 months, she had completely shrunk the massive fibroid down to nothing. It was completely gone. When she had a scan a year later, doctors could only see a tiny dot. They said, look, we could see a tiny dot where we believed the fibroid was, but can't see any fibroid anymore. So that was it, basically. And then I turned it into a framework. If you've learned anything from this video, if you like the information that you received in this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. And it'll be useful for me to know what stood out for you in this video. What revelation did you get? What opened your eyes? What is the thing that stood out the most? Please comment below the video too. And also leave comments to let me know what else you'd like to learn from this channel, what topics you'd like me to cover on this channel. Also, I'm setting up a free community. I haven't completely set up the community yet. I've still got to add some information on this Fibroid Code Cracked, but it's a free community where women suffering with fibroids and fibroid symptoms can go. You can join this group for free. The address for the website is skool.com. That's school with a K, SKOOL.com /fibroid-code-cracked. So that's it. Skool.com /fibroid-code-cracked. And if you go there, you'll be able to click this yellow button to join this group. And you'll just need to provide your name and email address, I believe. And then you can join this community. It's literally, I've just created the group. There's only 5 members in it at the moment. And you can join, but hopefully it'll grow into a massive community of women who are conquering fibroids. That's the plan anyway. So yes, please like, subscribe, and comment below this video to let me know what stood out for you in this lesson and what else you'd like me to cover in future videos. Thank you very much.